What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik, aka Franchise Play, and I am back with another episode of Ask FP. As you can tell by the title, we are talking Rondo to the Bulls, why that sucks, and more. So I just first and foremost want to say that we got the speaker on, but we also want to. I just want to say that I'm happy for anyone who's decided to tune in today, and everybody who's tuned in for the previous episodes of Ask FP, as well as the rest of the programming on this channel. But I'm going to jump directly right straight into the questions because I got some stuff I got to get off my chest in regards to this. So the question of the week, which I twisted around a little bit for the sake of the actual title of this video, comes from Simon Torvey Sunland. And he says, I know you branded it ridiculous, and he's making reference to my article that I wrote on this topic, which was entitled Rajon Rondo Signing Makes No Sense. So he says, I know you branded it ridiculous, but how could you make Rondo work for the Bulls? So here's the thing, right? And this is, I guess, my answer or my way of handling this is somewhat complex. But do I believe? First, let's go back. Rajon Rondo last year led the league in assists. He's one of the top assist men in the NBA. So most people hear that and say, "Oh, well, wow, that's good for the Bulls. Someone to play, a pure point guard, distribute the ball, get the ball to Jimmy. So there's not this competition between Jimmy and Derek, a competition between Jimmy and the point guard the way we had last year, right?" And then a lot of people believe that Rajon Rondo is a above average defensive player. So I think there's two things to both of and this is a multi-pronged answer that I'm going to give. So just brace yourself. I think there's an issue with both of those things. First and foremost, Rondo is a good distributor. Rondo is a guy who has great vision. He sees the floor well. He penetrates pretty well and is able to create, obviously, for his teammates. But Rondo is what you call a selfish assist man. And some people might say, how in the world could you use the word selfish in a description for a guy who just led the league in assists? Reason being is this: Rondo does not value points the way he values assists. One of the reasons that he doesn't is because he's not a great shooter. Never has been and never will be, because he's 30 years old and he hasn't picked it up yet. More than likely, he's not going to. Okay. So Rondo stockpiles assists because that's how he makes his money. When he is able to sit down and negotiate with teams about his value, he needs or he wants for him and his agent to be able to make reference to the amount of assists that he averages. So the way that manifests itself on the court, and anybody who has watched Rondo extensively will tell you this: Rondo will have a shot that he could take that's actually the best shot for the team to have, but instead he'll kick the ball out to the corner, he'll kick it out to the wings, trying to pick up the assist because that's the stat that he cares about. So we're so used to associating the word selfish with a player who takes 40 shots, who will take shot against a double team. But you can also be selfish when it comes to other statistics: assists, rebounds. If you won't leave the paint, i.e. Pau Gasol, to defend against the pick and roll because you want to stay in the paint so you're closer enough to the basket to stockpile rebounds, does it look as though you're helping your team when you're adding those statistics? Absolutely. But in the grand scheme of things, when you're watching the game, you're actually hurting your team because you won't play in the team concept. It's about individual goals. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you watch Rondo play, Rondo is not a great defender. Rondo gambles a lot. He plays the passing lanes to get steals because steals get you statistics. When it comes to body up, man-on-man defense, take a look at the statistics for how often Rondo is scored upon when he's a primary defender. He gambles. His guy will get past him. He'll reach around behind him to try to poke the ball loose. But that's not a high percentage play. It's not. Rondo is very smart, probably a little too smart for his own good, which has led to some of the issues that he's had with coaches and so on and so forth. But he's not a locker room guy, which is something that the Bulls almost always covet. So I think those two things are the myth, right? But here's the thing. This is going to equate to a contract year for Rondo, right? Rondo, this is a 2-year deal. The second year is on a mutual option, so which means both parties have to agree to come back, right? So effectively, this is like a contract season for Rondo. If Rondo plays well, he'll get a humongous deal when the salary cap jumps to $107 million at the end of next season. You think the contracts that are going out now are enormous? Wait until next season, right? So Rondo wants in on that money, which is understandable. Anybody with a brain would want in on that. So I totally believe that Rondo's going to have a pretty good season. But here's the issue, and here's why I say the deal makes no sense. No matter how good Rondo plays, Rondo, Jimmy Butler, Nikola Mirotic, Bobby Portis, Doug McDermott, that team's not going to win a championship. Is that not the goal? Is that not what you're supposed to be trying to do? Okay, so at the press conference, when the Bulls were explaining their trade of Derrick Rose, they said they wanted to get younger and more athletic. So how does signing a 30-year-old free agent point guard get you younger and more athletic? Okay, so, well, people say, well, they still have a lot of cap flexibility because they can let Rondo walk after the first year of this 2-year, $28 million deal. Well, wasn't that the same situation you were in with Derrick Rose? So you could have let Derrick walk and the money would have been off the books and you would have still had the same financial flexibility. So what was the main difference? Do you want to do better this season? Okay, you want to do better this season, but how much better what's the ceiling for Rondo Butler? This tandem, what's the ceiling? It's not a championship. It wasn't a championship before Durant went to the Golden State Warriors. It was not a championship. This team is probably going to win somewhere between 42 to 45 games. I really believe that, unless they get attacked by injuries again. And what is that good for? The 5th seed, the 4th seed, and a first or second round playoff exit, which does what? Gets you a horrible or a mediocre draft pick. The Bulls need to get game changers. They need to get guys in there who change the game. You're not more than likely, there are always exceptions, but more than likely you don't get those game changers at 14 and 15. You get those game changers in the top 5, which means what? You have to let your team suck for a little while. This is basketball purgatory, is where the Bulls are living right now. They're not true contenders, but they're trying to sell the fact that maybe we are, Rondo, Butler, and they're not horrible or bad enough to actually get into the lottery to have a shot at getting the Brandon Ingrams or the Ben Simmons, or next year the Josh Jacksons or the Harry Giles, who are going to be at the top of the draft next year. They're not going to be getting those guys. They'll be getting some guy that was in the college for 4 years, which I'm not downing guys in college for 4 years, but most of the guys who are in college for 4 years are there because talent-wise they weren't ready to come out after the first or the second year. That's just the facts. We can talk about society, how that's a negative image. These are the facts, and this is the real deal. Okay, this is the real deal. This is how the NBA works right now. So the Bulls get Rondo, and it's a name, and people get somewhat excited about it and go, oh, wow, I'm looking forward to that. You're looking forward to another 40, 41 win season that doesn't equate to anything. And at the end of this season, the Bulls won't be in any better situation than they were before, or they would have been had they not traded Rose. If this was the case, they should have just let Rose stay, let him and Jimmy play out this season, see what happens, and then you would have been in the same situation. If you're going to rebuild, then why are you not trading Jimmy? And some people say, oh, you don't trade your best player. The best player on a team that isn't good enough is not worth much. Jahlil Okafor or Nerlens Noel is the best player for the 76ers. Are they untouchable? I mean, come on, let's think. If your team isn't good enough to win, to even be a contender. I'm not even talking about you have to be a surefire championship. You know, you go to look at the Vegas odds and you're looking like the Golden State. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about realistically, do you have a chance to win a championship? This is not baseball. This is not even the NFL where you get these surprise teams that come out of nowhere to contend for championships. Contenders in the NBA, we know who they are before the season starts. And right about now, if you were to say who can be a legit contender for an NBA championship, even if you were being totally flexible about this situation, you'd have to say obviously Golden State. Depends on what happens with San Antonio, but probably San Antonio. And I'm being generous now, so I'm not eliminating people, you know, as stringently as some might. Okay, the Clippers, you know, you'd have to say that they're there. I honestly, that's probably it in the West. There's nobody else in the Western Conference that you'd say has a real shot. If you go out east, you got the Cavs. Does anybody really believe Toronto is going to make a big enough stride to close the gap? Now, as much as I love Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah, and I plan to root for the Knicks a lot this season because of those two guys, they would need the absolute perfect storm to be a title contending team, right? So we got 4 or 5 teams, give or take, that have a legit chance to go to the championship. The Bulls are not one of them, and they're not even close, okay? Not even close. So you're starting the season with an expectation that is here, and the championship is here. What are you doing? That's my question. What are you doing? Are you rebuilding? Are you trying to contend? You have to make a decision, because indecision leads to mediocrity. And that is what the Bulls are headed for. Only way I can change my mind about that is if they were to trade Jimmy Butler, because then that means, okay, now you're committing to a full rebuild. I get it. I get it. Now I get it. Would it make the Bulls a worse team this upcoming season? Yes, but that's the point. So that you can fall to then get a special player that is a game changer. That's the point. That's the way this game is played. It's the way it's played. People cannot like it all they want, but that is the way it is played. So I had to open the show with that. So let's go to the next question. See, Simmons, Torvey Sunlands got me fired up in here, man. Got me fired up. All right, the next question comes from Tristan Hilton. And Tristan Hilton says, which LeBron big three is better? Also, do you see LeBron winning another championship with the Cavs? So he says, which big three is better? I mean, I think that's really pretty easy, because as it turned out, this Cleveland Cavaliers big three didn't actually turn out to be much of a big three. It was more like a 2 1/4 or something to that effect. Kevin Love had some decent moments in the finals, but for the most part, he didn't carry his weight as being a big three guy, you know, a member of the big three. James, Bosh, and Wade were a big three, and that was easily the better big three. It definitely was. But now, would that team beat the Cavs? I don't know. You can't definitely say that, because I think guys like Tristan Thompson and J.R. Smith and Kyrie, and obviously Kyrie, because he's in that big two I'm talking about, those guys were great. Those guys played amazing. So I can't definitively say that. But if we're just talking about the three versus the three, yeah, definitely I would give the Miami Heat big three the edge there. So let's go to the next question, which comes from Weston Flores. And Weston Flores says, thoughts on Lionel Messi retiring from internationals, from the international game play, or he's not gonna, basically saying he's not gonna represent Argentina anymore. He missed a PK that everybody pretty much thought he'd nail, and he freaked out. So to a lot of Americans, we may be looking at that like, dude, you're kind of overreacting. Like, it's cat, you know, we might think the equivalent is if Kevin Durant or LeBron miss big free throws at the Olympics and they say, I'm never playing international again because just blowing those free throws is just too much. And we might say, like, you're overreacting a little bit, bro. But the difference is cultural. In soccer and in other countries, playing for your country is bigger than playing for your club. So playing in the Olympics, if we were comparing it, playing in the Olympics would be bigger than LeBron playing for the Cavs. That's the way it is in other countries. So that's why that was such a big deal for him. Now, is that the right thing for him to have done? I don't know. I mean, you know, it's still, and I'd be shocked if that was the only deciding factor in him saying that. You know, there may be some other issue, some other thing that he doesn't want to deal with anymore. But, you know, I think that's how that breaks down. I don't know. He could always rescind it. You never know. You never know what happens. But I think that perspective is definitely needed to understand the decision if you don't get the way soccer is looked at in other countries. The next one comes from Ian Chill Boss Tatum. Which sports league / association would be the easiest to run as commissioner? Man, that's a tough question because I don't think any of them are easy. You know, I don't think any doing this that job's not an easy job, no matter what you do. Because what a lot of people forget about, and when we're talking about a commissioner, commissioners work for the owners. So whatever, I mean, it appears as though they're there for the fans and the game and so on and so forth. But Roger Goodell, Adam Silver, those guys, they work for the owners of their league because the owners run the league. So I think it's a tough job because while your bosses are these 30 or 30 guys or whatever, 32 guys in the NFL situation, you're getting criticized in the court of public opinion by the fans. So there's a balance in that. But I don't know if you realize, I don't know if how many people heard this, but Roger Goodell, I think they said over the last 2 years has made $32 million. So he is killing it. So for however much you talk about Roger Goodell, trust me, he's paid well for it. So I really don't know, man. I mean, that's a tough question. I would have to say neither, to be honest, because I think they all, each league carries its own. Some of them have similar problems and challenges, but then each league has its own unique challenges. And I don't know that I could quantify and say one is tougher than the other. All right, the next question comes from Ty Bud, and he says, Hulk Hogan, not counting the late 80s, early 90s, were glory days of the WWF. I guess he's asking me, which one do I prefer, Hulkamania or the NWO Thug Hogan? I can't say I preferred either or. I thought they both were amazing. Both personas were amazing. I'll tell you this, when he was able to pull off the heel as the NWO Hollywood Hogan, to me, that's what solidified him as one of the greatest wrestlers in the history of the industry. Yes, we all know saying your prayers and, 25-inch or 28-inch pythons or whatever you wanted to call it, and the mic work and all that was amazing when he was Hulkamania. But when he flipped the script and made you hate him as Hollywood Hogan, that's true skill in this industry, because some guys and I'm not saying that Steve Austin isn't skilled, because obviously he's amazing. But once Steve Austin became a face, a good guy, and he tried to flip back to be a bad guy, he could not find the switch to flip because the people cheered him anyway. And it's a skill to be able to make them hate you according to the storyline. Now, that's even tougher nowadays because the internet and social media and all that runs and ruins wrestling more than it did, when that didn't exist back 25, 30 years ago in wrestling. But that's tough. It's a really tough task. And Hogan did it, to me, just about as good as well as anybody ever has. So I like them both, but that last half was really an impressive move in my opinion. All right, the next question also comes from Ty Bud, and Ty Bud says, let's see, we got, is it me or does it feel like John Jones is yesterday's news, headlining UFC 200 or not, just not that much buzz? I don't know about that one, Ty. He's still him and Cormier are still the headline fight of UFC 200. They could have made Brock Lesnar versus Mark Hunt the headline, but they didn't. If you had an opportunity to hear or be on the conference call where all of the UFC 200 fighters were there, it started off like it was going to be Brock Lesnar's show, but John Jones and Daniel Cormier took that call over. Mostly John Jones with his bravado, and was able to remind everybody, hey, this is our show. He's a late ad, you know. So I don't think it's yesterday's news. I think that, you know, Brock somewhat taking some of the shine away shows you that the UFC is still a growing industry. MMA is still a growing sport. I shouldn't say UFC is a growing industry, still a growing organization. MMA is still a growing sport to the point where their biggest star or one of their biggest stars still can't be superseded by a novelty act. And I hate to call Brock a novelty act because he truly is an amazing athlete. But in the grand scheme of things, having not fought in as long, 4 or 5 years now there is, and, you know, coming back from professional wrestling, he's a novelty act in the real world of MMA until he proves himself otherwise. So put it like this: if LeBron James was playing and, I don't know, somebody, there's not even a parallel that you can draw, but some guy came back from being an actor or something of that effect, and had gained fame as an actor, and he came back and he was playing in the game on the same night as LeBron, would he get some shine? Yeah, but LeBron still is going to get the majority of that love because basketball is big enough where its biggest star can't be leapfrogged by a guy who's a big story to commercial fans, not just basketball fans. So I don't know. That's my take. Next question comes from Trash Boat 2K, and Trash Boat 2K is asking, how do you see the Sergey Kovalev versus Andre Ward fight playing out? Man, I'm going to tell you, man, that's people are sleeping on how great of a fight that could be. Like, you know, when you really see a great fight against with the pits two truly talented and excellent top level fighters against each other. I don't know about you guys, but I think most people who are real hardcore boxing fans can attest to this. There's a nervousness, there's a tension in the air when they're walking into when they're walking, you know, they're doing their ring walks when the face-off happens, because you legit don't know what's going to happen. And no matter what happens at the end of this fight, somebody really, really good is going to get an L. And if you understand the magnitude of big time boxing, then you feel that nervousness, and that's going to be a fight where you're going to feel that nervousness. They're not household names. Andre Ward's definitely more known in the United States. He's American. But Sergey Kovalev is an absolute monster. So honestly, my personal opinion, a lot of people give Gennady Golovkin a lot of love and credit, and he definitely is proven to be a big time puncher and so on and so forth. But he hasn't really beaten anybody. In my opinion, Sergey Kovalev is much more proven than Gennady Golovkin. So I'm not saying Golovkin's not as good or even better than Kovalev. All I'm saying is that he hasn't proven it. So now he's going in the ring with somebody in Andre Ward, who, in my opinion, was the number 2 pound-for-pound fighter behind Floyd Mayweather when he was active. And now, you know, the contract disputes and some injuries had left him inactive, and he has a lot of critics. But Ward is as skilled as they come. So now we're talking about these two guys fighting. Ward hasn't lost a fight, I don't think, since he was 10 years old or something in an amateur fight when he was 10 or 12 years old. He's won straight through the Olympics, undefeated professional career. This is big time. So I think that Ward's speed and boxing acumen should win out by decision. But there's an obvious question as to how much did the layoff really affect Ward? Now, he has a fight coming up against Alexander Brand, which is a tune-up for Kovalev, and Kovalev fights Isaac Chilemba on Monday. So they both have a tune-up fight coming up, and people are going to be watching those fights very closely because it's the fight right before those guys meet. So if all things are equal, and as we have seen in the past, then I believe that Ward wins the fight by decision. But I just don't know which Ward we're going to get. So we'll see what happens. The next question comes from Simon Torvey Sunland. And Simon Torvey Sunland says, do you think OJ Mayo will return to the NBA? I think that's a good question. And for anybody who doesn't know, OJ Mayo was suspended for 2 years for violating the NBA drug policy. I don't know for a fact whether or not it's been revealed what exactly it was that he had been taking, but it wasn't marijuana, because you can't get a ban like he got for marijuana. So it's either performance enhancing drugs or cocaine, or it was hard drugs. Basically, hard drugs is what he got banned for. So first and foremost, I'm praying for him, because OJ Mayo, the person, is more important than OJ Mayo, the basketball player, So a lot of times people are just going to jump in with their jokes and they're going to hit people while they're down and all that. That just shows how people have sports and life just mixed up a lot of times. Priorities are all off. And a lot of times we dehumanize athletes because we forget that they're actual people. So, this is a person that's obviously hurting and in pain. So hopefully he gets better. What I think he's going to do is, for these 2 years, he's probably going to go play overseas. But he needs to get his life straight first, because you can take a drug problem to Turkey. You can take a drug problem to Spain, whatever. If you got a problem, you got a problem. You can't, leaving the country ain't going to fix it. Not alone. So hopefully he gets himself together, goes over, makes himself some money playing in internationally. And at that point, I believe there will be a market for him when he comes back, especially if he plays well in international play, assuming he goes that route, and teams are able to do their homework and investigations and making sure that he's okay and all of that. But here's another thing. A lot of times when a person's an addict, and I don't want to necessarily call them an addict because we don't have that information, but a lot of times if a person has a drug issue, changing the scenery is what helps them kick. So if OJ moves to another country and is able to better himself in that way, does he really want to come back to the United States where those issues and those temptations may still be? So that's something to think about too. I don't know all of the parameters of what is what, but that's just something I'm throwing out there as a potential concept in this whole thing. But in any case, I'm praying for him, and I hope that he gets everything together. The next question is from Von Respa Jr. And Von Respa says, will John Cena ever become a top 10 wrestler of all time? Well, Von, he already is. I don't care what anybody says. People love to bash John Cena. They love to do all this crazy stuff. First and foremost, we might want to say, okay, well, John's not the best in the ring. Well, he's not the best, but he's certainly not bad. People want to say that he is, but what in the ring would you value a wrestler to be able to do, especially one of his size, that he can't do? He'll take any bump. He'll put over anybody. He'll do all of these things. And we don't even need to talk about mic work. because we already know he is, in my opinion, a top 5-6 guy of all time when it comes to mic work. So people need to put aside the fact that they hate the way the WWE booked John, the way they made John a Superman. That has nothing to do with John Cena. You know, that nothing to do with John Cena, the person and the performer. You don't like the persona. People don't like what they made him out to be. But as a worker and as a performer, he already is top 10 of all time. All right. And the next question comes from Simon Torvey Sunland, and he asks, what do you think of Mike Conley's historic deal, 5 years, 153 million, and how will it affect the league moving forward? Well, Simon, I don't think it's going to affect the league that much singularly, because there's only going to be a matter of time. Next year, somebody's going to have a bigger contract than that anyway, because the cap is going up from 94.6 million, I think it is, to 107 million. And once that happens, LeBron's probably, unless he has some kind of deal worked out where he's going to take less money to play with his boys, LeBron probably can make 35 million next year. Steph Curry's a free agent at the end of next year. Let's really think about it. Come on. Now, if Mike Conley got 5 years, 153 million, what do you think Steph's going to get? You know, Blake Griffin's a free agent next year. Kevin Durant can be a free agent again next year. Russell Westbrook's a free agent next year. By this time next year, Mike Conley will be probably the 15th highest paid player in the NBA. That's how the salaries are moving right now. So I don't think now overall, how will this salary boom affect the NBA? I mean, depends on how greedy the owners are going to be. People want to talk about the players and how much the players are making, but I always tell you this. If I can afford to pay you $30 million a year and you're one employee, how much must I be making? Think about that. If an organization can afford to pay one dude 30 million, 25 million a year, and they still got to pay 13 other guys in the millions, they still got to pay a coach, they still got to pay the training staff, they still got to pay all of the people who work in the arena, people in the front office, all these different people they still got to pay. Think about how much they're bringing in. But here's the thing. Owners' salaries or pay or take is not really ever publicized. But the players get their whole W-2 on the internet. You know what I'm saying? So that, and it's probably not a W-2, it's probably 1099. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? This is what I'm saying. So I don't think we'll even be talking much about it around this time next year. We'll be talking about, wow, we thought that was big then, but look at what's happening now. I think that'll be the only reference made to Mike Conley's contract. All right, the next question comes from Weston Flores, and Weston Flores says, do you think that Michael Jordan would have had the same success and legacy if he never played with Rodman or Pippen? Well, the Rodman thing is definitely, I don't think it's so much relevant, because you remember Mike had 3 rings before he even played with Rodman. And I'm of the belief that the first 3-peat Bulls team was actually better than the second. Mike was younger. I'd take Horace over Dennis Rodman, because as a complete player, I'd take him over Dennis Rodman. Was he as great a rebounder? No. But Horace was a better offensive player. Horace was a ridiculously good offensive rebounder. And as an overall defender, I'm going to tell you, if Rodman was better than Horace as an overall defender, it wasn't by that much, because Horace was a shot blocker and Rodman never was. Horace was excellent defending the pick and roll, stand with guards off of the screen. What everybody wants big men to do now, to be able to stay with guys, Horace did that, and he could do that. But a lot of people forgot that, because the Rodman, Pippen, Jordan team was a rock band. But Jordan, Pippen, Grant, I believe that team was better. That's just my opinion. It's coming from somebody that got to watch almost every single game from both teams, all 6 championships, right? So, but would Mike's legacy be the same? There's no question. Pippen, Rodman, Grant, Paxson, all of those guys played a part in Mike's 6 rings. But Michael Jordan is one of the few athletes that I believe would have reached a certain level no matter who his teammates would have wound up being. Like, I believe that, I'm not saying he would have won by himself. He would have always had to find a second fiddle, a second guy, a supporting cast that was able to carry their weight and able to do, Pippen was amazing. Pippen, and still, in my opinion, is the best Robin to somebody's Batman that we've ever seen. But I just believe that Mike was great enough to elevate the next person under him to be, as long as they were talented, of course, because Pippen was amazingly talented. As long as they were talented, he could have elevated as long as he had gotten somebody else put around him. So I think that if the Bulls general managers, or even if he played somewhere else, as long as they put the players around Mike would have won anyway. And there's few players that have played that I would say that about, but he is definitely one of them. The next question comes from Derek Dynasty, and it's a would you rather. He says, would you rather go to the Super Bowl or Game 7 of the World Series, NBA Finals, or Stanley Cup? Well, for me, the Super Bowl thing is totally out, because I'm not even a person that even enjoys football in person too much, to be honest. A lot of people go, what? When I say that? But if you think about it, when you're at a football game, they always tell you being on the 50-yard line is the best place to be, right there on the field. Even if I had the first row seat on the 50-yard line, there's going to be times in the game where the action is either all the way down there, all the way down there. So if they're on the goal line on this end of the field, I'm looking like this. If they're on the goal line on that end of the field, I'm looking like that. And there's part of the action that you can't see. To be totally honest with you, you have a better seat when you're at home. You get all of the replays you want to get. If you're watching on DVR, you can rewind it if you want to rewind it. I mean, they got all kinds of 360 replays now. It's a better seat for me. Now, baseball is different because it's about being there. The ambiance, the green grass, all of that, just the big, open, beautiful sky, which of course you get in football too, but it's just different. Just different. But if I had to pick, it would be Game 7 of the NBA Finals. That would be the ultimate for me. That's the ultimate for me. That out of the championship deciding games, that would be the one that I would pick. All right, next question comes from Victor Daniel Torres. And Victor Daniel Torres says, who do you think will be the biggest surprise in the NBA next season? I think you're talking about teams, and I believe that the Philadelphia 76ers are going to be the biggest surprise. Now, I'm not talking contending or anything like that, but it's so funny that we talk so bad about the 76ers and the route that they were taking to get respectable. They were just stockpiling these bigs, and they were just terrible for so many years. I do believe they drafted too many big men, but I do believe that this is going to be the first year that you really see them take that jump. And why? Same reason. We're going back to what I was talking about with the Bulls. They got the number 1 pick, and they got a true game changer in Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is a game changer. They're going to move one of those bigs. So Okafor, Nerlens Noel, one of those guys are going to move. They got too many bigs because you still got Joel Embiid finally going to play this year. They don't have any idea what they're going to get from him, but they do. We can forget how talented that guy was, but he's really talented. So we'll see what happens. Also, Dario Saric. They signed Gerald Henderson. They have put together a decent team. So, and they're young. So I think they're going to surprise some people. They're going to be like the Eastern Conference's Minnesota Timberwolves this year. I think they can win about 30 games. And I'm telling you, I think that's the team. I think that is the team that will be the biggest surprise. The next question also comes from Victor Daniel Torres. And he says, in your opinion, which player was most overpaid in free agency? Now, this is a crazy kind of an answer, but I'm gonna be honest, and you guys might not like this answer, but it's how I really feel. Um, I don't think that anybody was overpaid because I truly believe that you're worth whatever somebody is willing to pay you. So we can sit up here. I heard people just bashing Timofey Mozgov when he got his money. I mean, they were just tearing him to pieces. And I don't even think Rondo's overpaid, even though I don't like the signing. 2 years, $28 million, $14 million a year. You're in the NBA. Owners making money hand over fist. I'm going to sit up here and say Rondo's overpaid? That dude up in the skybox who can't make a jump shot is probably overpaid, So I'm not going to say Rondo's overpaid. I'm not going to say Mozgov's overpaid. A lot of the people mostly criticizing these contracts couldn't score 20 points in the gym by themselves for an hour. So I don't think anybody's overpaid. Surprising contracts based off, because that's the thing. I've been telling people this all the time. Don't look at the dollar amount. Look at the percentage of the cap. Because I think the way it works, if my math is correct, it might be slightly off, but the concept is there. A guy that's making $14 million a year this year is the equivalent of a guy making about 8.5 or 9 million last year. Now, it's true. It was a really quick jump. But if you're sitting back, I saw all these memes and GIFs and people tweeting, Steph Curry makes this much. Timofey Mozgov makes this much. That's apples to oranges, man. You can't compare it that way because the time has changed. Yes, it's a 1 year, but he's making that much. It's relative to the salary cap. So it's not as if they're overpaying guys. First and foremost, every NBA team has to spend at least $84 million. So somebody's gonna get a lot of money, man. You know what I'm saying? Somebody's gonna get a lot of money. So I don't think anybody's overpaid, basically. All right, the next question comes from Philly 0024, and Philly says, if you were a player, what would you rather have accomplished? To be a Hall of Famer with no rings, or an average player with multiple rings? Ooh-wee. That's real deal right there, Philly. And I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be totally honest. And I believe most people would feel this way, even if they wouldn't admit it. I'd rather be a Hall of Famer with no rings. I would. Because if you are just, what do you call it, an average player? Who wants to be average? Like, who wants to be average at anything? Like, obviously, yes, the ideal situation would be to be a Hall of Famer and somebody that won rings. But that wasn't in your ultimatum there, your question. But who wants to be average? I'd rather be great individually and not have reached that ultimate team goal than to be average individually and had somebody else that was great carry me to the ultimate team goal. So essentially the question is this: would you rather be John Paxson or Charles Barkley? Would you rather be Judd Bushler or Karl Malone? Come on. You mean to tell me you'd rather be Judd Bushler? You'd rather be John Paxson? Both of those guys got rings. I would say they're definitely average players. They were average players. Karl Malone's a Hall of Famer. Charles Barkley's a Hall of Famer. And neither one of them have rings. Would you rather be the other guy? Nah. People will lie and say different, but nah, no way. Trash Boat 2K has the next question, and he says, would you be happy if Jerry Reinsdorf sold the team? A lot of Bulls fans I know don't like him. You know what? I don't have a major issue with Jerry Reinsdorf. Would it be nice to have a owner who totally doesn't care about going into the luxury tax because he just got that much dough and he's willing to pay the luxury tax? Yeah, that'd be. Who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want that, right? But I don't think Jerry Reinsdorf is inherently awful as an owner. Bulls got 6 championships. Obviously, yes, Mike. But If he sold the team to a free spending and smart businessman, it would be exciting. But I'm not somebody that's calling for Reinsdorf to sell the team either. So, that's just it. Well, that is all I have for you today on Ask FP. I do appreciate everybody who tuned in as usual. God bless. Peace.